They showed up with clipboards, fake patches, and threats, convinced they could scare me out of the house I'd worked my whole life for. But what they didn't know was that 6 Navy SEALs were already on their way to my driveway. The first warning came in the sound, not soft, not casual, but 3 bone-shaking knocks against my front door. Not the kind of knock that says, "Hi, neighbor." No, the kind that says, "We own you." I froze in my kitchen, dish towel still in hand, water dripping off a plate. My chest tightened. My gut screamed this wasn't normal. And when I opened that door, I realized just how right I was. They showed up with clipboards, fake patches, and the kind of threats only cowards rehearse in the mirror, convinced they could scare me into giving up the house I had bled for. But what they didn't know was that 6 Navy SEALs were already on their way to my driveway. The first warning came not in what I saw, but in what I heard. Bang, 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 3 bone-rattling knocks against my front door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor borrowing sugar, not even the stern rap of a delivery guy with bad news. No. This was the kind of knock that makes your chest tighten before you even turn the knob. The kind of knock that says, "Open up, or else." I froze in the kitchen, dish towel still in my hand, water dripping from the plate I'd just rinsed. For a moment, all I heard was the hum of my fridge and the TV down the street flickering faint. Blue light through the blinds. It was just past 6 in the evening in Concord, North Carolina. Not late, but not early either. That strange twilight hour when most people are winding down. Dinners simmering on stoves, kids finishing homework, dogs barking at nothing. I dried my hands, walked toward the door, and with every step, the weight of that knock hung heavier in my chest. I wasn't the type to get rattled easily. At 44, I'd been through plenty. Financial struggles, raising kids alone, losing my wife to divorce. Life had thrown me harder hits than most. But the moment I cracked open that door, I realized my night had shifted into something I couldn't have dreamed up if I tried. 2 men stood there, both in tactical vests with bold white letters stitched across the chest. HOA Enforcement Division. I blinked. They looked like law enforcement at first glance. Radios clipped to their belts, clipboards in hand, stern faces carved out of stone. But there was something off. The radios weren't even switched on. The badges looked like they'd been laminated at the nearest office supply store. And that patch? I'd lived in this neighborhood nearly a decade. There was no HOA Enforcement Division. The taller one spoke first. Shaved head, scar above his eyebrow, eyes that scanned me like I was already guilty of something. "Mr. Dunmore?" "Yeah, that's me," I said slowly. "You've been found in violation of neighborhood code," he barked, voice like a script rehearsed 100 times. "Per HOA policy, you're required to vacate this property within 48 hours. For a beat, I thought he was joking. I even let out a short laugh, the kind you give when someone tells a bad joke at the wrong time. "Vacate?" I repeated. "I own this house, paid off the mortgage 7 years ago. I just spoke to the HOA president last month." The second man stepped forward. Shorter, stockier, mirrored sunglasses still covering his eyes even though the sun was setting. His voice was a growl. "Doesn't matter. You're out of compliance. We've been authorized to serve notice. You've got 2 days to clear out." My stomach turned, but not with fear, with anger. Because I knew, right then, this wasn't just intimidation. This was a scam. See, real authority doesn't need to pound on doors in fake uniforms. Real authority doesn't carry clipboards with blank forms and cheap laminates. These men weren't from the HOA. They weren't from anywhere official. They were fakes, pretenders, parasites hoping I'd panic and fold. And if there's one thing about me, I don't fold. I crossed my arms. If the board had a problem, I'd get a letter, maybe a fine. Not 2 guys playing dress-up in tactical gear. The tall one leaned closer, voice dropping low enough to thicken the air between us. "Sir, we're not here to debate. We're here to enforce. You can leave quietly, or we can escalate. My father used to tell me, real power doesn't..." Need to shout, these men? They were screaming fake from every angle. Their badges looked like they came off a printer. Their paperwork had no letterhead. And their radios? Nothing but props. Who sent you? I asked flatly. What's the president's name? What violation? Code am I breaking? The stocky one shifted, impatient now. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Most people don't argue. They're too scared. They just leave. Well, I said, staring him down, you picked the wrong house. Because I don't scare easy, the tall one smirked. Or what? You gonna call the cops? Tell them the HOA came to your door? He actually chuckled. Go ahead. See how fast they show up for that. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't confusion. This was a setup. They wanted me rattled. They wanted me to make desperate calls. They wanted fear. Instead, I gave them silence. A silence that stretched long enough for both of them to shift uneasily. Finally, the tall one leaned back. 48 hours, he said. After that, we'll handle it our way. They turned, walked back to a black SUV parked at the curb, and climbed inside. I shut the door, locked it, and stood there, hands trembling. Not from fear, but fury. Who in the world had the nerve to show up at my door with fake patches, fake threats, and a fake eviction notice? I didn't know it yet, but backup was already on its way. Old friends, brothers, men who'd make sure this night ended very differently than it started. And as I stared through the blinds, watching that black SUV idle at the curb, I realized this was only the beginning. Because if I thought two fake HOA cops were bad, I had no idea what they had planned for round two. I didn't sit down after they walked off. Couldn't. Instead, I paced the living room like a caged animal, staring out the blinds at their black SUV. They weren't leaving, just sitting there, engine humming low, the passenger tapping away on some kind of tablet, probably watching to see if I'd panic. That told me everything. They wanted me rattled. They wanted me to call someone. They wanted me to look desperate. Not happening. I grabbed my phone anyway, thumb hovering over the HOA president's number. Then I stopped. Something in my gut said no. Whoever sent those clowns, they wanted me scrambling, calling the board, maybe even calling the cops. They wanted a scene. I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction, so I did the opposite. I opened the blinds, pulled the door wide, and stepped back onto the porch. Hey, I called out loud, enough for half the street to hear. Mind telling me who exactly sent you here? The passenger door creaked open. The tall one climbed out again, his boots heavy against the pavement. He walked back toward my yard with a slow, deliberate stride, like a man who thought the whole street belonged to him. I already told you, he said, voice clipped. We're here on behalf of the HOA. I shook my head. No, you didn't. You threw some line at me and hoped I'd swallow it. So let's try again. Name. Which board member authorized this? His jaw twitched. You're asking too many questions for a guy who's about to be homeless. That did it. I stepped down off the porch, closing the distance until we were just a few feet apart. You picked the wrong door, I said flatly. I've been paying into this neighborhood since before you probably even knew it existed. If the board had an issue, I'd get an email, a letter, a meeting, not two wannabes in fake vests trying to muscle me out. That got under his skin. The SUV's passenger door slammed, and the stocky one strode up, mirrored shades glinting even though the sun was almost gone. He yanked a paper from his clipboard and shoved it at me. Here, read it. You'll see we're not messing around. Snatched it from his hand and glanced down, and then I laughed. Because this wasn't an official notice. It wasn't even a bad forgery, it was worse. A lazy printout with blank lines, bold phrases like violation of Code 14B and mandatory. Eviction. No HOA letterhead. No seal. No signatures. It looked like something they'd pulled off a free template website. I waved the paper in the air. You seriously think anyone's gonna fall for this garbage? This isn't worth the ink it was printed with. The shorter one bristled, voice turning sharp. You don't get it. We don't need you to believe us. We just need you to pack your stuff and go. Most people don't argue. They're too scared. Then you came to the wrong house, I shot back, eyes narrowing. Because I don't. Scare easy. For a second, the air hung heavy between us. Then the tall one leaned in, voice dropping lower, as if he thought menace was the same thing as power. Listen, man. We can do this the polite way, or the hard way. Nobody wants the hard way. I stared him down, my chest pounding not with fear, but with adrenaline. I'll tell you what nobody wants, I said, folding the paper and shoving it back into his chest. Nobody wants to pick a fight with the wrong man on the wrong night. His smirk cracked for the first time, just a flicker. Then he stepped back, motioning to his buddy. 48 hours, he said again. After that, it won't be polite anymore. They turned, stalked back to their SUV, and climbed in. The engine growled, but they didn't drive off. No, they stayed there, idling, headlights throwing a dull glow across my lawn. I stood on my porch, staring right back at them. They wanted me out. They wanted me scared. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't standing alone, because I had backup. The kind of backup that made 2 fake HOA cops look like kids playing dress-up. And as the first pair of headlights turned onto my street, I realized my backup had just arrived. The SUV sat there like a vulture, engine idling, headlights glaring at my porch. They thought they had time on their side, thought the longer they sat, the more rattled I'd get. But I wasn't rattled, I was waiting. See, these clowns didn't know my circle. They didn't know that in my phone contacts, under nicknames most people wouldn't understand, were the kind of friends you pray you never have to call, because when they show up, things change fast. And then it happened. The faint glow of headlights at the end of the street. At first, just one, then 2 more, rolling slow, engines low and steady, like a warning growl from a dog you couldn't see yet. The tall one must have noticed, because he turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing. Friends. Of yours? He asked, voice flat but with just enough edge to let me know he was second-guessing things. I folded my arms, the faintest smile tugging at my lips. You could say that. The SUVs pulled up, tires crunching gravel, engines cutting off in unison. Doors opened one after another, heavy, deliberate, and out stepped 6 men, not boys, not posers. Men, broad shoulders, eyes sharp as blades. The kind of posture that doesn't need words to command respect. Jonas Redden, tall, streaks of gray in his beard, stare cold enough to freeze fire. Marcus Vale, the kind of guy whose silence carried more weight than most men's threats. Pierce. Lockhart, sharp-tongued, sharp-eyed, the one who could smell weakness before anyone else. Damian Crowell, Silas Trent, Vaughn Kessler, all of them cut from the same cloth, former Navy SEALs, brothers in arms, my brothers. The imposters stiffened. Their smirks evaporated. Cal, Jonas said, his voice low but full of steel. What's going on here? I pointed toward the 2 fakes, still standing by their SUV with clipboards and laminated badges that suddenly looked ridiculous under the streetlight. These jokers say they're from the HOA, I said. Told me I've got 48 hours to pack up and leave my own house? For a beat, silence hung heavy. Then Pierce laughed. A sharp, cutting laugh that made the imposters flinch. You've got to be kidding me, he said. HOA cops? That's a new one. Marcus stepped forward, his boots crunching the gravel. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Show me your badges, he said simply. The tall fake swallowed, lifting his clipboard higher like it could shield him. I don't answer to you, he muttered. Oh, but you will, Marcus said, voice smooth as glass. Because right now, you've got 2 options. Hand over those fake badges, or we walk over there and take them off you. The stocky one shifted uneasily, his mirrored shades catching the porch light. For the first time since this whole circus started, I saw fear slip through his cracks. And let me tell you, it was beautiful. Because in that moment, the balance shifted. They weren't the predators anymore. They were the prey. But the fakes weren't done yet. Because what they pulled out next wasn't on any HOA rulebook. The night air felt heavier now. 6 of my brothers in arms standing shoulder to shoulder, calm as stone, while 2 imposters in dollar store tactical gear shifted like kids caught with spray paint on their hands. Marcus hadn't moved. He didn't need to. His presence alone had the shorter one twitching. Show. Me. The badge, Marcus repeated, voice steady. The tall one's jaw tightened. He reached into his vest pocket. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd actually hand it over. But instead, he pulled something else. A folded sheet of paper, crumpled from being shoved into his pocket too many times. He flicked it open and shoved it toward Marcus, like it was some kind of ace card. Violation code 14B, non-compliance, mandatory eviction, he recited like a robot. Signed by authority of the HOA. Marcus tilted his head, took the paper, and glanced at it. His lips curved into the faintest smirk. This, he said, this isn't even a good forgery. No signatures, no letterhead. Hell, I've seen better paperwork taped to telephone poles for lost cats. Pierce barked a laugh. Damien shook his head. The stocky one bristled, stepping forward, voice rising now, desperation seeping in. You think this is a joke? You think we won't follow through? I crossed my arms, my voice calm but sharp. No, I think you're about to realize you picked the wrong house, the wrong man, and the wrong night. That's when the tall one changed tactics. His hand slid slowly toward his belt. Not the radio, not the clipboard. Lower, toward something tucked against his hip. My gut clenched. The SEALs noticed too. Silas shifted his stance. Jonas's eyes locked like a hawk. Marcus's hand came up, palm out, the universal signal of don't you dare. Think carefully, Jonas said, his voice deep and cold, because the second you draw that, this ends differently than you planned. For the first time, the tall fake hesitated. His confidence cracked, sweat beading at his temple. He glanced at his partner, who shifted uneasily but gave a small nod, like they were both trapped in a script they didn't know how to finish. 48 hours. The tall one muttered again. But this time the words had no weight. They weren't threats. They were excuses. They backed toward their SUV, climbing in without another word. The engine roared, and the black vehicle rolled slowly down the street until its taillights disappeared into the dark. I exhaled, shoulders finally loosening, but Jonas didn't look relieved. Neither did Marcus. They'll be back, Jonas said, quietly, his eyes still on the corner where the SUV vanished. And I knew he was right, because men like that, they don't walk away, not until someone makes them. And when they came back, they didn't just bring threats. They brought fire. They didn't stay gone for long. I knew it the second Jonas's eyes lingered on that dark corner of the street, even after the SUV's taillights had vanished. Men like that don't just disappear. They regroup, they reload. They come back, and sure enough, they did. It was just past midnight when the sound of engines broke the stillness of the neighborhood. Not one vehicle this time, 2. Headlights cutting through the dark, tires crunching on asphalt, stopping right outside my house like they owned the block. I was sitting in the living room, my SEAL brothers spread out around the house like shadows, calm but alert. We'd been waiting. Pierce glanced out the window and let out a low whistle. Told you. They weren't finished. The tall one and the stocky one climbed out of the first SUV, but they weren't alone this time. 2 more men stepped out of the second vehicle. Same fake vests, same cheap badges, same cocky walk. Only difference? This time, one of them carried a crowbar. The other had something long and heavy wrapped in cloth. Jonas muttered, "Amateurs with toys," but my gut still tightened. because amateurs with toys could still do damage. They marched up my driveway like they were staging some kind of show. The tall one called out, voice booming through the quiet street. "Mr. Dunmore, this is your final warning. 48 hours are over. Time to vacate." I stepped out onto the porch, arms folded, 6 seals silently flanking behind me like shadows, stretching out of the night. "You don't tell me when I leave my house," I shot back. "You don't tell me anything." The stocky one sneered, waving his crowbar like he was itching to smash something. "Don't test us, old man. We'll tear this place down piece by piece if we have to." Jonas stepped forward then. Calm. Controlled, but his voice cut like a knife. "You touch this house. You touch him," he said, pointing to me, "and you'll answer to all of us." The imposters laughed. It wasn't the confident laugh of men in control. It was nervous, forced. "You think you scare us?" the tall one said. "We've handled worse than a washed-up vet and his drinking buddies." Marcus's lips curved into the faintest grin. "Buddy, you really don't know who you're talking to." Then the cloth came off the long object one of them carried. Not a gun, thank God, but close. A sledgehammer. The guy swung it once, through the air like he was warming up. "Last chance," the tall one barked. "We can do this nice and easy, or we can level this place tonight." My jaw clenched. Adrenaline surged. For a split second I wondered if this was it. If tonight was the night I'd see my home smashed because of a scam too stupid to be real. Then Jonas moved. One step forward. Shoulders squared. His voice came out steady, not loud, not angry, just certain. "Put the toys down," he said. "Because if you swing that hammer, I promise you, you won't leave this driveway standing." The imposter hesitated. Sweat glistened on his forehead under the streetlight. His grip loosened just slightly on the hammer, but the tall one barked, again, desperate now. "Do it. Show him we mean business." The hammer man raised it higher. That's when Marcus and Damien stepped in, flanking Jonas like wolves closing in on prey. "You really want to try that?" Damien asked quietly. 6. Against 4. You've got props, we've got training, do the math. The imposters froze. Their eyes darted between us, me, calm but boiling with fury, and 6 Navy SEALs, who looked like they'd seen 100 nights worse than this. The crowbar lowered first, then the hammer. The street went quiet again, except for the sound of engines idling. The tall one cursed under his breath, fists clenched, but he didn't step forward. Not this time. He knew he was beaten, at least for tonight. "We'll be back," he growled finally, jabbing a finger toward me. "And when we come back, you won't be so lucky." I held his stare, my voice flat. "Come back all you want. You'll get the same welcome." They backed off, climbing into their SUVs. Tires screeched as they peeled down the street, disappearing into the dark again. Silence returned. The kind of silence that makes your heart pound harder because you know it's not over. Jonas exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "They're testing you, seeing how far they can push." "Yeah," I muttered, eyes still on the corner, where they vanished. "But next time they won't bring crowbars and hammers. Next time they'll bring something worse." And deep down, I knew the next round wasn't going to be about intimidation anymore. It was going to be about war. Because when they returned the 3rd time, they didn't just target me, they targeted my family. If the first visit was a threat, and the second was a test, then the 3rd was war. And this time, they didn't just come for me. They came for the people I loved. It was 2 nights later when I got the call. My daughter, Leah, 20 years old, a sophomore at UNC. Her voice was trembling through the phone, panicked in a way that made my chest seize. "Dad, 2 men came by the apartment, said they needed to talk about your property. They knew my name. They knew where I go to school. They left a paper on my door." I froze. Every muscle in my body went rigid. because I knew exactly who had sent them. Not debt collectors, not some random prank. No. The same imposters who had stood on my porch, who had shoved fake notices in my face, who had waved crowbars and sledgehammers. They weren't satisfied with trying to scare me. Now they were dragging my family into their scam. My fist, clenched so tight the phone creaked in my hand. Leah, listen to me. Don't talk to them. Don't answer the door. Stay with a friend tonight, you hear me? I'll handle this, she sniffled. Dad, what if they come back? They won't, I said, though my voice was shaking with fury. Not after tonight. I hung up and turned. Jonas was already watching me, his eyes sharp, reading the storm on my face. What happened? He asked. They went after my daughter. I growled. College apartment. Left threats on her door. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Pierce slammed his fist against the wall so hard the picture frame rattled. Low-life cowards, he spat. They can't break you, so they go after your family. Classic intimidation move. Marcus leaned forward, calm but deadly serious. Then it's time to flip the script. No more waiting for them to show up. We take the fight to them. I nodded slowly. My anger wasn't the wild, trembling kind anymore. It was cold, focused. They wanted me scared, I said. Instead, they just gave me a reason. We didn't have to wait long. By the next evening, the black SUVs rolled down my street again. Not sneaky, not cautious, brazen. They parked, at the curb like they owned it, headlights on full blast, illuminating my front lawn like a stage. 4 of them this time. The tall one, the stocky one, Hammer Man, and a new face. Young, jittery, eyes darting everywhere. Probably some recruit too dumb to know what he'd signed up for. I stepped out onto the porch before they even knocked. My SEAL brothers followed, fanning out behind me like a living wall. The tall one smirked. Guess you got our message. I didn't answer. Just stared him down, jaw tight. Your little girl, he said casually, like he was talking about the weather. Cute place she's. Got near campus. Be a shame if... He didn't finish the sentence, because Jonas stepped forward so fast the words caught in the man's throat. You shut your mouth, Jonas said, voice low, dangerous. You don't say her name. You don't think about her. You don't breathe in her direction again. Or I swear to God, you won't walk away from this street. The imposter faltered, just for a second, but then puffed his chest, trying to look tough. We've got orders. We'll do what we have to. Orders from who? Marcus demanded. The HOA president? Or the voices in your head when you... Bought that vest off eBay, the stocky one snarled. You think this is a joke? We've been patient. Too patient. You've got one last chance. Pack up and leave. Or next time we won't just bring papers and hammers. Behind me, Pierce laughed darkly. Next time? Buddy, there won't be a next time. The imposters shifted uneasily. Their show of confidence was cracking. They could feel it. The difference between men who'd trained for real wars and men who played pretend with clipboards. Still, they didn't back down. The tall one stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. This is your last warning. Family or not, you're done here. And that was it. The last straw. I stepped down from the porch, closing the distance until I was standing just feet away, my SEAL brothers a silent storm behind me. You think, you can scare me with cheap patches and fake notices? I said, my voice steady, loud enough for the neighbors peeking from behind curtains to hear. You came to my house, you threatened my daughter, and now you're standing here thinking, you've still got power. Let me make something clear. I jabbed a finger at his chest. You don't run me. You don't run this house. And the next time you so much as drive down this street, it won't be the cops you'll have to worry about. It'll be us. The imposters froze. The SEALs stepped forward in unison, boots crunching on the pavement, a wall of muscle and fury that made even the stocky one stumble back a step. For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then the tall one cracked. He hissed something under his breath, turned on his heel, and motioned to the others. They piled back into their SUVs and tore off into the night, tires screeching. leaving nothing but the stink of rubber and cowardice behind them. I stood there, on the lawn, chest heaving, hands trembling, not from fear, but from the kind of rage that burns cold and deep. Jonas put a hand on my shoulder. "They'll come again," he said, "but next time, we'll be ready." And I knew he was right, because now it wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about my house. It was about my daughter. And no fake badge, no cheap vest, no SUV full of cowards was ever going to touch her. So when they returned for the final showdown, I made sure it was the last time they ever set foot on my street. I knew they'd be back. Men like that don't just slink away after being humiliated. No. Humiliation festers, it grows, it twists into rage, and it makes them reckless, and reckless men are dangerous. It was Friday night when it happened. The neighborhood was alive with weekend chatter. Kids riding bikes, grills firing up, the sound of laughter drifting through the air. Normalcy. The kind of normalcy I hadn't felt in weeks. Then the calm shattered. The sound of engines again. Louder this time. More of them. Not 2, not 3. 4 SUVs barreled down my street, tires screeching, headlights blazing like floodlights. They skidded to a stop in front of my lawn, blocking the entire street like a barricade. The neighborhood went silent. Curtains twitched. Doors creaked open just an inch. People were watching, but nobody dared step outside. I stepped onto my porch, heart pounding but voice steady, and there they were, the tall one, the stocky one, Hammerman, and a couple of new recruits, jittery, mean-eyed, and desperate to prove themselves. 8 in total now, twice as many as before. All of them piling out, stomping toward my house like a private army. Only this wasn't an army. It was theater. Fake uniforms, fake badges, fake power. But they thought numbers would tip the scales. I almost laughed, because while they doubled, their ranks I still had something they couldn't manufacture. 6 men behind me. 6 Navy SEALs, brothers who'd faced real battlefields, who'd stared death in the face and kept walking. I didn't need numbers. I had them. Jonas stepped forward first, his voice carrying across the street like thunder. "That's far enough, the ha." Imposters froze mid-step. Their bravado flickered, but the tall one forced a smirk. "Big welcome committee," he sneered. "You think you can scare us off for good? We've got authority." He jabbed his finger toward his vest, toward that cheap laminated badge. Marcus barked a laugh so sharp the imposters flinched. "Authority? You're standing on this man's lawn in knockoff uniforms pretending to be cops. The only authority you've got is over your own stupidity." The stocky one snarled, waving a crowbar like it was Excalibur. "We're not leaving until he's out of this house." I stepped down off the porch, closing the distance. My voice was calm, but every word was sharp as glass. "You don't run me. You don't run this house. And tonight, this ends." The tall one smirked wider, but his eyes darted nervously. Big talk for a man surrounded. And that's when Jonas chuckled. Surrounded. He motioned toward the SEALs fanning out beside me. "Son, you're outnumbered and outclassed. We've been waiting for you to try this." The imposters shifted uneasily. But then Hammerman lifted his sledgehammer high, and the young recruit beside him pulled something from under his vest. A can of gasoline. My blood ran cold. Neighbors gasped from behind their curtains. The plan was clear. Now, they weren't here to scare me anymore. They were here to burn me out. Before I could speak, Pierce's voice cut through the night, sharp and mocking. "Gasoline? Really? That's your plan? You think arson's going to scare a SEAL team? Buddy, I've faced RPGs in the desert. Your little can isn't even a warm-up," the tall one snapped, his temper cracking. "You don't understand. We've got backing. We've got power you don't see." Jonas stepped forward, towering, his voice dropping to a growl. "The only power I see is the power of some desperate losers about to make the worst decision of their lives." The standoff was seconds from exploding. I could feel it. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then it happened. The recruit unscrewed the gas can lid. The smell of fuel hit the air, sharp and sickening. That was it. The line crossed. Jonas gave a single nod, the signal. In an instant, the SEALs moved. Not chaos, precision, a storm of controlled force. But the real victory wasn't just in beating them back. The real victory was in what happened after. The imposters thought they could storm my home, threaten my family, and walk away like kings of the block. But by the time the police cruisers rolled up, lights flashing red and blue across the neighborhood, they looked more like fools caught playing dress-up at a costume party. Phones had been recording the entire showdown. Every neighbor on the street had proof. The fake badges, the crowbar, the hammer, the gas can, even their pathetic attempt at an eviction notice was captured in crystal clear detail. The cops lined the imposters up against their own SUVs, cuffing wrists and reading rights. Their protests were with the HOA, were drowned out by laughter. Even the officers couldn't hold back smirks. One officer held up the laminated badge, squinting at it under the streetlight. "Where'd you get this? Party City?" The neighborhood chuckled. The imposters burned red with shame. Jonas leaned close to me, his voice low. "That's justice enough for most folks. But for you, I think it's just the beginning." He was right. Because this wasn't just about a few cowards in fake uniforms. This was about exposing them, about making sure they never pulled this stunt on another family again. Within 24 hours, the footage was everywhere. Neighbors had uploaded it to Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Titles like "Fake HOA Cops," "Get Taken Down by Navy SEALs" spread like wildfire. Local news picked it up, then regional outlets, then national. Suddenly, Concord, North Carolina, wasn't just another quiet suburb. It was the scene of one of the most bizarre scams the country had seen. Reporters swarmed my street, cameras pointed at my porch, microphones shoved in my face. How did you know they weren't real? What went through your mind when they threatened your daughter? Who were the men who stood with you? I didn't answer everything. Some things weren't mine to share. But I did tell them this: you don't let bullies win. Not in schoolyards, not in boardrooms, and definitely not on your own front porch. The imposters weren't just charged with trespassing. Oh no. The DA stacked it high: impersonating officers, attempted extortion, criminal threats, conspiracy, attempted arson. The works. Turns out these guys weren't acting alone. They were part of a bigger scam ring targeting homeowners, picking people they thought were vulnerable, flashing fake badges and forcing them out to flip the houses. But they picked the wrong man. The evidence from my neighborhood, the videos, the witnesses, the fake notices, cracked the whole thing open. One by one, their partners were dragged into courtrooms, their scam empire collapsing like a house of cards. And me? I didn't just sit back and watch. I sued. Civil court, emotional distress, property damage, harassment, and with the videos plastered everywhere, with a jury watching their smug faces crumble under cross-examination, the verdict was swift. The settlement? Enough to pay off Leah's tuition, remodel my house, and take a vacation I'd been putting off for 20 years. Revenge tastes best when it's legal and public. But the real victory wasn't money. It wasn't headlines. It was standing on my porch a week later, grill smoking, beer in hand, my brothers laughing around me, while neighbors came by not with fear but with gratitude. Thanks for standing up. You saved us all from being their next target. You showed them what happens when they pick the wrong street. Leah came home that weekend. When she hugged me, she whispered, "I knew you'd protect me." And for the first time in weeks, my chest finally loosened. Because this house, it wasn't just wood and brick. It was proof. Proof that when you stand your ground, when you refuse to be bullied, when you have the right people by your side, you win. I'll never forget the look on the imposters' faces that night. The exact second they realized their fake power meant nothing against real resolve. They came with clipboards and threats. They left in handcuffs and shame. And me? I got my house, my family, and my peace back. So if you're listening to this thinking, man, I've dealt with HOA nightmares, I've dealt with Karens, I've dealt with people trying to bully me out of what's mine. Remember this. Bullies only win when you let them, and sometimes the best revenge isn't just standing your ground. It's having 6 Navy SEALs show up in your driveway. Have you ever dealt with an HOA or Karen? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more HOA revenge stories.